And this is Russia House. And that's my son, and Sean, that's certainly younger than me. Sacha's now 45. Okay, so I don't keep, film stuff. No film here, no film here. Here's a couple of things. Oh, here, this is.
Wow, Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, that's from when I did Bluebird in Leningrad. And with George Cukor directed it, Ava Gardner, Jane Fonda, Cicely Tyson, oh my Lord, Robert Morley. And it was one of Cukor's last films. Yeah. And he was such a wonderful man. And our director of photography was Freddie Young, Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago. This is Return to Oz. And Return to Oz was, for me, a really great, I felt it was an accomplishment. It really was. They called me in to take over the picture. Well, it was in pre-production. And Walter Murch, who was the great sound editor and editor, this was his first film to direct, and it was a Disney film. But it was a very innovative picture because we used animatronics to a great extent, and it was a dark movie. That was Walter's vision for it. I think it's a classic movie. I really do. This was my band in college. Southern Collegians. I'm the trumpet player. And it was Washington Lee University, 1950.
Oh my goodness.
And it was right at the beginning of the Korean War. And boy, I had just turned 18. And I'm going to school in the South. I was brought up in New York City, in Queens. And my brother was there. He was 2 years ahead of me. I had my ticket on the Holland American line. I had $500, and I had my trumpet. I took off. I wound up in Paris, didn't speak a word of French, and finally got work in a band. Benny Corson was studying, he was a Dane, and he was studying film in Paris at the Cinematheque. And we became friends. And a lot of my friends were Fulbright guys, Fulbright scholars. Benny said, I'd like to make a movie about your friends. I said, what do you want me to do? We're going to have to raise some money. I have crew from Copenhagen come down, a wonderful cameraman who did news footage up there. And he said, Benny was a director. He's studying it, and he knows how to edit film and on the Moviola, da-da-da-da. I didn't even know the terms, that we're talking about. So we have to get, so I go to the Fulbright people in Paris, and I said, here's the idea. We're making a movie about, these are the students, they're all here. This is the names, this is their disciplines. And we'd like to make a 16mm movie, and probably a half-hour documentary. It'll be in black and white. How much could you pay for such a thing? I asked him straight out. My first deal. And he said, well, if we like it, you got to always worry about that one.
Of course.
If we like it, we'll pay you $1,500. Oh, so that was my budget, right? So the next thing I had to do, have to get a writer, because Benny is not. We have to have some sort of scenario for it. So I needed a script for it. So James Baldwin is there, and so I asked. I said, Mr. Baldwin, do you know a young writer? And I explained the subject, what we were doing, Fulbright thing. And he says, yes, I've got just the person for you. I've got Melvin Van Peebles. I said, okay, I don't know who Melvin Van, and he gave me the telephone number and the address. I walked down the hall, and there on his door it says, Melvin Van Peebles, writer.
Oh, wow.
I knock on the door, and there's Melvin, and he's stretched out, and he's an African-American. I thought it would be a Dutchman, I thought it would be Van Peebles. Anyway, we talked, and he was the nicest, smartest, quickest fellow I had met in a long, long time. And I explained to him, I said, what I'm doing. And he says, what's the budget for the thing? And I said, the whole thing is $1,500. He wrote a terrific thing. We made the movie, did the thing, and came back. They rejected it.
Oh, my gosh.
Wasn't enough story about their academic world. It was more social, and it's the truth. We showed some classrooms, but what the hell? It's a good film. I wish we could find it. So now we're out. I'm out $1,500. The money came from my folks, my mother, father, stepfather, stepmother, and Ike Pappas, who was my close buddy in high school, became a great CBS correspondent. And he entered the picture in the Short Film Festival, in the Court-Métrage Festival in Cannes, as a debutante Danish director. Like they give an award for debutante director for Court-Métrage. And he wins a modest prize. Doesn't win first, but the picture did. At that time in America, there was a desperate shortage of product for television. Television just began. This is 1959, 1960. Television is chewing it up, and there's big labor problems in California. And so product isn't coming out, and Screen Gems and these other companies are acquiring as many films as they can. And they bought my documentary for $1,500. Up to Belgrade, which was then, of course, one of 8 republics in 8 republics in Yugoslavia, to set up the picture. And it was great because on that picture I met Jack Cardiff, who was the director of the movie. And I knew Cardiff's work as a director of photography, which was just ravishing work that he had done. Red Shoes amongst them.
A lot of the Powell Pressburger films, and African Queen even, which I'm used to.
You got it. And Cardiff was a wonderful man. Because I ran the second unit, I wound up doing that. And second unit was big time because we had all the Viking ships, the Moorish ships. We had horses. At one time we had 500 Yugoslav cavalry, 250 dressed as Moors, 250 dressed as Vikings in a battle. At this time I figured I'm learning enough. I feel that maybe I'm in the right place, maybe to produce a picture. What kind of movie do you make? Warren and I would go have a few drinks at night. So we decided we'll make a horror picture because we know that's currency. You don't have to spend a fortune. You're in Italy where there are castles. There's a lot of talent here for horror pictures. We'll make it in English, and we'll make a co-production. By this time, I'm learning to get a way around. I understand that to put pictures together, you need a little bit of Spain, a little bit of Italy, a little bit of Germany, and maybe later a sail to America. If you're lucky, that's your profit. We're going to make something called Castle of the Living Dead. Who's the #1 horror star at the time was Christopher Lee. So we decided to go to the Royal Court Theatre that night to see a Spoon River anthology, a wonderful play, Sherwood Anderson, I think. And there on the stage of 15 actors, each playing different roles. And one of them, a tall guy with an Adam's apple, and he just was incredible. And we go backstage afterwards, and we approached him and says, "Boy, you're really good. We have 2 or 3 roles you can play. We're doing a film." He said, "How much are you going to pay?" I said, "Well, we'll pay you $100 a week, and you'll sleep at Warren's house." And it was Donald Sutherland. It was Donald's first role. That picture, that was the first picture I made. And I decided this, I really want to do it. Made it for $120,000. And I sold the picture to Sam Arkoff. Sam Arkoff was running a company called American International Pictures. And Roger Corman was there, and of course Coppola was there eventually, and Scorsese. All of them worked. Jonathan Demme did. Sam Arkoff made B-movies for the drive-ins. And then later on he had bigger movies. But so Sam bought my first picture, Castle of the Living Dead, for television. Amazing. So I did 2 years with UA, and then I was anxious to leave, and Ike Pappas came over to Rome. He said there's going to be a war in Israel. I said, "I want to go with you, man. I've never been to Israel. I want to volunteer. I want to go with you." He said, "You can't." I went with him. I left my job. Ultimately, of course, fired. Big front page of Variety, you know. And I left this great job, and I went to Israel, and I drove a Avis rent-a-car for CBS and unit, and operated some sound, and we did the whole war. We were the only ones to get the surrender. We were the only ones to opening of the wall, and it was great stuff. Came back, I was fired. UA, they fired me for leaving my post. And I remember And so the head in New York says, yes, go apologize to the vice president, a guy by the name of Ilya Loper. He says, we want you to stay with us. I said, I don't know. He said, yeah, do it. So I go, and my office in Paris, he keeps me waiting. This guy keeps me waiting. And finally I come in, and he starts berating me for leaving. I said, fuck you. And I had in my pocket, I had 3 little stones from the Wailing Wall that I had picked, and I had a Syrian flag that I had taken off a Syrian prisoner. And I took it, balled it up, and I threw it down. I said, go fuck yourself. And I left this great job. But it helped me, I did King, the miniseries about Martin Luther King. And it was a wonderful experience for me because I missed the entire civil rights revolution while I lived overseas. I missed it all, and this was the introduction to it all, right in the heart, working with Coretta King, with Martin, with all the family.
That must have been incredible.
Oh, Ralph Abernathy, working with these people, Andrew Young, but with them on a daily basis, and the actors were magnificent. Oh, Love Child's an interesting one because when I was doing King, I met the most extraordinary attorney by the name of Murray Silva, who represented the King family at one time. And Murray was an Atlanta attorney and former judge. And he and I developed a friendship which lasts till today. And Murray said, I have a client that I think would make, her story would make an interesting movie. And I said, yeah. She said, well, she's already been on 60 Minutes. And I'll send you the episode. He sent me the tape. And it was a story of this Julianne Kupke, who was a young 18-year-old girl in Orlando, Florida. Her 17-year-old cousin comes to visit her. She works in a laundry. She's a white girl. And she's just making it barely, but she's making it. And the cousin from up in Ohio is a rascal, and they're out hitching, and hitching from a convenience store, and the young cousin pulls a gun and threatens the driver. They take $8. They're caught 10 minutes later. The kid turns state's evidence. He's let go. The girl is now in jail, and she is eventually sentenced to 7 years. And for a robbery, armed robbery, and no one's represented. I mean, she's public defender was lousy, a hangman judge, and she's so frustrated that in her cell she lets fire to her mattress. She gets another 10 years. She's sent off to the Broward prison for women, the maximum security prison for women in Broward County. While there, one of the few Caucasian girls, but also just a tough girl. She had friends, but she had enemies. And while there, a male guard, has an affair with her. This is all true story. Has an affair with her. And they find places and they do whatever. And it's all very carefully done. And she gets pregnant. And she tells him, he splits. He leaves the job. Gone. Wow. Now she's pregnant. She can't tell anybody because the rule is if you're pregnant, you have an abortion, or you have the child and the child goes into an institution until you come out. Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's what it's all about. And so she keeps it. She keeps it until it's a little late, and she's put in solitary when they find out she's pregnant. And right next door to her is a woman serving life, not going to be executed for. Was a college student at University of North Carolina, I believe. And somehow with a terrible other college student, they shot a state patrolman. She gets life in prison. Very smart girl. Also jail smart. Goes to the law library every day. She researches this girl's case. Says, hold it. There's a loophole here. And the girl finds it, gets a public defender in Orlando. Writes a letter, public defender, first year out of law school, boom, wins the day, gets out of jail, has the baby. Great story. Goodness. Other studios were trying to buy the rights for it. I didn't know that. Murray didn't tell me. So I go to CBS and I said, I have the rights. They said, you can't have the rights. No one has the rights. I said, no, pick up the phone and call the attorney. And of course they did. We want to make it with you. Oh, anything you want. I said, great. Then I said, maybe this would be a good feature. So I go to Laddie. I told him the story, says, you got a deal. And that's when we made the picture. Amy Madigan, Larry Peerce, we shot in the Broward prison every day, having to be numbered going in, numbered going out.
Wow.
We did that for a number of weeks, and it was a great experience, and Peerce is a wonderful director and great person to work with. Of Alan Ladd Jr., his smarts, because he is one of the smartest guys in the film business ever. He ran, as you know, he ran Fox. He was the one who said, let's do Star Wars, you know. And he was the one who said, let's do Police Academy. So amongst so many wonderful Chariots of Fire, I mean, you go on and on and on, the taste of the man. But relationships are very significant, maintaining relationships.
The Police Academy, was that a spec script, or was that a concept that you had developed?
Here's the story of Police Academy. When I finished Love Child, I had just gotten divorced, and I had 2 children, and I had to work right away. I didn't have another picture already prepared as a producer. So Laddie hired me to go up to San Francisco to be the representative of the Ladd Company on The Right Stuff, which was shooting in San Francisco. Phil Kaufman shooting it. Now, we needed to shoot the John Glenn ticker tape parade. It's all set up. I'm there at 6:30 in the morning, waiting for the crew to arrive. I'm waiting for the police to arrive and the whole thing. And comes a group of policemen that didn't look like the policemen that we needed for all of them for the picture. And they lined up, they looked funny. They really did. So there was about 40 or 50 of them, of which we could use quite a few. And I asked the cadre guy who brought them with the bus, SFPD had said, I said, excuse me, I said, this is an interesting looking group. He says, well, we have a fair employment hiring here in San Francisco, and these are Police Academy cadets. And the off-duty policemen are working, the regular policemen are working the stadium today. And so these are police cadets. I said, are these your future finest? You know? He said, well, frankly, he said, you know, we have to take them in, but we can flunk them out after 3 weeks. I said, oh, okay. And I started thinking about it. So that night I sat down and wrote a 2-page story about a group of people who don't want to get thrown out. They want to become real cops and they win the day, da-da-da. So next day, Gareth Wiggin, who was Laddie's head of production and running the Right Stuff too, he was supervising, came up. On a weekend we had a hamburger and I said, read this, I'd like you to read this. I know Laddie's got a couple of more pictures on his deal. And he read it, he says, it's cute. I said, yeah, show it to Laddie when you go back. He shows it to Laddie, Laddie calls me, I go in, after we finish The Right Stuff. I go in and he says, you know something, I think this could be a funny picture. How much can you make it for? I said, tell me and I'll make it for that price. He said, make it for under 5. Make it for under 5. Make it for 4 something. I said, you got it. We got to get a script written. My wife at that time knew Pat Proft, who had written some stuff. We got Pat Proft and Neil Israel to write the first script. Boy. After 2 months, 3 months, it came back. I worked with him on the story, and comes back. Yeah, there was some funny stuff in it, but it's long before our movies, hard R movies, and there was a lot of stuff in that. And Laddie didn't respond well. I didn't respond well, and Jesus, I'm saying, I'm out of business here. I I get a call from APA, the agency, that one of their agents has a guy by the name of Hugh Wilson, who I didn't know the name. Hugh Wilson has picked up the script from the desk of his agent, because we had sent the script around looking for directors and things. And even though it was a lousy script, sent it out. And the agent calls me and says, well, there's a fellow by the name of Hugh Wilson who's interested, who wants to, we'll call it. So I get a call from Hugh Wilson at home. Yes? He said, I read your script. I really don't like it. There's some funny stuff, and it's a great premise. I said, who are you? He says, well, I created WKRP Cincinnati, and I write all this stuff. And oh, Jesus, God, it's one of my favorite shows. And he was the creator of it. And a wonderful... He says, give me the weekend. I said, you got it. Monday morning, I get the script. We shot that script.
Wow.
He transformed that script.
That's amazing.
Over a weekend, because that's what television writers did. Hugh Wilson did it. We shot the picture. We shot it for under 4.3, 4.4 up in Toronto, and came back, and we previewed the picture at Preview House, which used to be on Sunset. Now it belongs to another company. That's where everybody's attached to a dial. And you sit up there with the editor, the director, and the head of the studio in a glass booth, and you hear what's going on with your picture, and you see on a dial what's going on with your picture. I don't like, I like. I don't like, I like. From the opening credits. From the opening credits, it was way up here. Opening credits. We hear the laughter. It's almost off the charts. We know we got something. The picture's over, the last scene, the needle goes zoop. Not down to the bottom, but to medium. Wow. When you do a comedy, you got to leave what we call it the hats, when they take their hat. You got to leave up if you're doing a comedy. You got to leave with something buttoned up in that comedy. Whether it's the music, the life, the whatever, outtakes, you got to do something. And it was not. So we all sat there glum. Laddie says, let's meet in the office tomorrow morning. Let's think about it. We go to the office, we sit there. I thought about it a lot. What can we do to button it up? What can we do? Got in the office. Before we sat down, Laddie says, I've got it. He says, we've got to reprise the best joke of the movie. Find a way. And Hugh Wilson and I both looked at each other at the same time. We snapped our fingers. Reverse it. Have Guttenberg on, you see it, the reverse.
Yeah.
First it's Lassard getting a blowjob. Remember? And that was the biggest laugh in the movie. It built my house in the colony. That one joke did.
When you came up with this concept and you got that great draft, and you saw it, did you know it was going to be as phenomenal as it was?
I was 50 years old, right? But when I made the movie, I was 49. And when it was released, I was 50. I'd been in the game a long time. I made a lot of movies. Had a lot of hopes with a lot of movies. I knew that I had something that was good, but I had no idea that it had, because I had never had a hit. I had never experienced a hit. And what's curious about it was I didn't experience it here. I had to experience it when I was shooting Return to Oz in London, because the picture was released then. So the night before the release, oh, by the way, we shot it and we tested it, and I was gone on the other picture when they were doing all the real tests on previous week. They booked 300 theaters, and they were going through the roof with the, so that they knew, but they didn't let me know in London. Laddie didn't let me know what was building on the picture, because something was building. And on the weekend of release, remember London's 8 hours, was 8 hours I think at that time ahead, 8 or more. And I decided with Matt Clark, who was in, my friend, was in Return to Oz, and Matt was the actor in Return to Oz with Piper Laurie. And Matt, I said, Matt, let's make a pub crawl. I said, I don't know what this picture's going to do, but I got everything riding on it. And so we made the tour of the pubs. I come home, a little smashed, and I said, "Did you get a call?" She says, "Yeah, I got a call." I said, "Well, what's the figures?" She said, 800 something. I said, "What, 800? It can't be 800 million. It can't be, it has to be 800,000. And I knew we had 1,200 theaters. That I did know. I said, "Jesus Christ, the picture is tanked." So I called Laddie. And I said, "Laddie, Sally says 800. No, he says it's going to do 8 million too this weekend. It's the biggest hit Warner Brothers has had in the spring almost ever."
Oh my goodness.
He says, "You'll never have to work again." Which isn't true, but, you know, which was the beginning of 7 of them.
7 movies.
64 half hours and 26 1 hours and stunt shows all over the world. And it became an industry, but it also became a family. Because all of them, Michael Winslow, Steve Guttenberg, you know, all of them, Matt McCoy, Mary McCoy, Janet Gretzky, Janet Jones. I mean, through those pictures, David Graff and Bubba Smith, G.W. Bailey, Lance Kinsey. The cast goes on and on and on. People that, and also we broke out some wonderful people. David Spade was in our movie. Bobcat Goldthwait, first appearances in our movies. Once you have a director direct that first scene of the picture, the floor is his. And as a producer, you must give him the floor. You can. When you see things that, for whatever reason, if you feel not being covered well enough, depending who the director is. I'm not going to say anything, frankly, to Carol Reed or a George Cukor, but to a director that hasn't had that much experience. But what I will do, I will never say it in front of the crew. You take them aside, you take them in and you never make it obvious that there is any kind of acrimony between the producer and the director. A director knows when he's falling behind. Number one, every director, as a pro, gets a progress report every day. You see whether you're ahead, whether you're behind, how much film you shot, how many were printed, how many were, etc. So a director really does that. There are some directors, frankly, who just don't care. I mean, we know historically how some of them have happened, whether it be a Heaven's Gate or something, that just don't care about production, feel that production perhaps is a bit of the enemy. And it just shouldn't be. It's such a collaborative business that a producer, to do it properly, must listen to all their department heads, must certainly listen to the director's concerns, and be able to synthesize, put it all together so that he has as smooth a voyage as he can. And because making a picture to begin with, it's usually created in a kind of hysteria, it's executed in madness, and is released in relief. You know, so I remember the biggest thrill I ever got also turned out to be one of my biggest shocks. When Castle of the Living Dead, my first movie, was released. It was released in Italy. I saw it in Italy during the summer. When I was there in those years, 61, 60, there was no air conditioning in the theaters in the summer. So the movies that went into the theaters in the summer were the dregs, were the third releases, were the fifth releases, were the horror pictures. So we went to the first night of showing at a big theater, and it was the greatest thrill of my life. There it was, on the screen, produced by Paul Maslansky. The film, I had the cast there, and my wife was there, and the director, of course, and we're all so proud. We see the picture and the crew and citizens, people saying the movie was packed. And the lights go up at the end, and we're all proud, and we hear a voice from the back say, "Solde indietro," which means my money back.
Oh my gosh.
And then another person in the crowd said the same thing. So it was the height and the most humiliating thing.
Wondering how you would define being a producer. Your type of producer who develops material. Yeah. What do you feel is your essential job?
Right. There are different kinds of producers. There is the kind of producer that I was at one time, which is someone who knows the mechanics of filmmaking and the financial side of filmmaking so that they can execute a movie that is given to them in script form, maybe help with some casting, working with the director, but being the one on the set who really runs the movie, and the buck stops with him. There may be somebody back in Hollywood that's the executive producer, that's the one that found the project. That's the one who maybe worked through the period of developing the screenplay, which is, boy, that's it. Executing the picture, a lot of people can do. A lot of good ones out there, and they're great ones. The other kind of producer is what I kind of morphed into, which is someone with the chops to be able to execute a movie, but at the same time to be able to look for something that you could develop and knowing how to develop it, how to get, so that producer gets the dream. He's the one who has the dream. He sits, that was the dream I had about Police Academy. That was the dream I had about the right stuff, about the Love Child. A lot of the movies I did in the past, the first horror pictures, I had a dream that that's what it should be. And then you get someone to execute your dream. And you've got to supervise it. I just think there's so much technique in making movies. Every department has their specialty, and it takes a lot of time to be really good at it. Really good at it. It's not something for a dilettante. You've got to really give your effort to it. And it starts with the idea, with the story. If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. And that's the way it is. And it always will be. One picture that I've been in development with, which shows truly what a producer has to do, okay? I just turned 80 in November. And I know it's the tail end of the third act as a producer. Not many producers out there at the age of 80. I have to be aware of that. And I'm aware of it when I sit in a meeting and there are 35-year-old executives who have opinions. And I'm sure they're looking at me as the old guard, you know. But I feel I hang things on the wall. I've got things that I can really hang on the wall to show that I've done it. About 18 years ago, I said, 18 years ago, my passion in life is jazz. I spent a lot of time in New Orleans. I made movies there, a movie there. I belonged to the union there. That was Louis Armstrong's union. I want to make the definitive movie about how jazz was born, because it is, without question, the #1 cultural addition to the world, I think, that America has made. And so Michael Ondaatje, who wrote a novel called The English Patient, which eventually was made into a screenplay and eventually won an Academy Award for the movie. Michael Ondaatje, one of his earliest novels, was a novel called Coming Through Slaughter. I read this novel when it was published. I knew it was something I had to make someday if nobody else would grab it before me, because it's the story of the first king of jazz, a true story of Buddy Bolden, who was truly the first king of jazz, the first man to step in front of a band and play a solo, the first man who really brought to popular music and to music that new thing, that beat, that everything that was eventually synthesized came into jazz. And he wrote this brilliant novel, and I had Mark Bailey, who's a great screenwriter, write a screenplay, and Michael Ondaatje has allowed me to try to set this up for 15 or more years. That's the one I want to make. That's the one I eventually want to make. I've got the screenplay, and I know there's some young rap artist out there that can play Buddy Bolden, who's got music in him. And he was an incredible character. It's a wonderful story. It really is. That's the one I want to make. I want to make another Police Academy and the Bruce Lee remake of the Silent Flute that I made. Those are the ones, and that's what I'll be doing, besides playing Frisbee on the beach. At the right time. I was there. I just had made this documentary. All of a sudden, I want to get into the business, because I was fascinated by it. I just loved it. I loved the fact that you're on a tightrope too. You know, you got to always keep going. You know, nobody's going to stop for you. You just got to keep it. I figured that every morning in this town, maybe 2,000 men and women look in the mirror and say, as a producer, say, today's the day. Today's the day. And it comes, or it doesn't. Anyway.